Hey, welcome everybody. We are here, and it's Wednesday. We're excited, and today we're having our monthly podcast with Olivier Melnick, and it's an update on everything Jewish. And Olivier is going to be joining us. I mentioned last time, joining once a month with me. Again, update on everything Jewish. Olivier, welcome to the program today. And we have a lot to talk about with everything Jewish here today.
It's good to be back. Thank you, Tom.
It's great having you here. Listen, before we get going, I know we have some details we need to cover today that people are really going to be interested in regarding what's going on in the world. But real quickly, you have a couple of books that are available that people I think are going to be interested, especially after the subject matter that we're going to get into today.
Yes, the website they can go to is newantisemitism.com, and I have this one that came about a year ago or so, maybe a little over a year ago, End Times Antisemitism, and it has half of the book is actually history of antisemitism through the ages, and it has a lot of end notes. This is a great tool to really help educate people on exactly what, several topics we'll talk about today, and beyond education, you have to take action. And the good news is that the action book is a lot smaller. So you can study a thicker book on what's going on over the ages with the Jewish people up to today, pretty current. And then here is another book, and they're both on my website and both on Amazon. You can order them, End Times Antisemitism and The Time Is Now. And I always like to mention that the foreword for this one was written by you. Thank you very much.
Hey, you're welcome, and thank you for asking me to be involved in that. Listen, let's get going because we have a lot to cover, and we're specifically going to get some things that you had brought up recently in a couple of news articles. But before we go there, and it's somewhat alarming, but before we go there, in New York, apparently there's a lockdown that appears from some of the things that I've read, and maybe I'm not getting all the right material. It appears that there's a lockdown that targets the Haredi communities in New York. Do you know anything about that? Is that accurate, or is that some misinformation?
I think it's 9 different neighborhoods in New York, within the 5 boroughs of New York. As of like a few hours ago, it was nine neighborhoods. It could change. Tom, we know that things can change every hour of the day on every day right now. This is 2020. Things could change. But Mayor de Blasio instituted a new lockdown on Orthodox communities. And I don't really care for many of his policies, and I don't think he's the best mayor New York ever had by a long shot. But the other side of the coin is something that we also see in Israel, is that the Haredi community, the Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox communities, they live a communal life. They're together. They do everything together. They live in neighborhoods where basically they congregate together for many things throughout the day and throughout the week. And so it's difficult for them to stay home, to do things on video. It's nearly impossible. So we have to look at both sides. I think de Blasio is not necessarily transparent, as he's not really doing this with all communities or all groups. We've seen Black Lives Matter, not to enter another topic, but where we have big gatherings with no mask, or people get whatever they want, they protest all together, and it happens. They let that happen, and then we see a Jewish community that is being punished. But again, that community finds it very difficult to separate and do things on their own without being in a communal lifestyle. So that's why it's a challenge.
Yeah, I could see it. I know what it's like. And whenever I go to Jerusalem, just observing the community. But it is, from my perspective, it's troubling because I do know that it seems, you can look at New York, they've had massive gatherings for BLM and other organizations. So you go, I don't know, and de Blasio has been challenged with some anti-Semitic things in the past, some of the things he's said and some of the actions he's done. So that is, I look at it, it has my my attention, and we'll keep paying attention to it. But
I think it was also Cuomo who said it was a few weeks ago who said that if the Jewish community of some areas, if they don't abide by what they're saying, they could close their synagogues permanently.
Yeah, remember that. Yeah. So you hear some of these things and you're thinking, well, this is interesting. And certainly, especially with the subject that we're talking about today regarding anti-Semitism. And by the way, each month we may take a different topic. We've even, we'll probably do Hanukkah, Passover, we'll do various things, probably even what's the Shabbat look like for the Jewish person who celebrates Shabbat, whether it be Orthodox home or otherwise. But right now, I want to go to some things that you recently wrote and regarding some of the trends that are trending, that are going toward the way of anti-Semitism, especially when you look at what is happening with the millennials. So fill us in to what you see and some of the things that you were able to write and have them published.
Great concern, Tom. The great concern is the current young generation, the millennials, and then the next one, I think they call them Gen Z. Their lack of interest in history in general, and I'm always, I always have to be careful not to paint with broad stroke because I have two of those, and my kids are that generation of millennials, and they're not necessarily exactly the same. Even both of my kids are different, so we don't have to paint with broad strokes. But generally speaking, there is a great desire to be involved in quote unquote social justice, and very, very often you find out that the facts are not checked, history is not compared, or it's just like whatever goes, whatever feels good. And there's a survey, and I have it on my other screen, so I'm turning my head to look at the numbers. The survey it was called the U.S. Millennial Holocaust Knowledge and Awareness Survey. And so I just took that survey and kind of analyzed it. And what was interesting, it was made in all 50 states of the Union, which is I think the first of its kind to be all over the United States. And they asked questions about the Holocaust. Tom, they are very, very scary. Now, people have accused me over the 20 plus years of me studying and teaching about the Holocaust and anti-Semitism and that topic in general, of always bringing up that topic. But you know what? I'm sorry. I'm going to continue to bring up this topic when, for instance, in the questions asked, can you name one concentration camp or one ghetto out of 40,000 of them? You think you could pick maybe one? 48% of millennials could not name one camp or one ghetto. Auschwitz, Dachau are the two most infamous ones. The Warsaw Ghetto, most people of our generation, we've heard of it. Even if you're not Jewish, even if you're not interested in history, you've heard about it, part of the war. Another one is, what is Auschwitz? What is Auschwitz? 56%, that's over half of millennials, could not respond. They did not know what it was. And as to the other camps, they're less known as Treblinka or Buchenwald, 1 to 3% knew what they were. 1 to 3%.
1 to 3%. So this is somewhat very disturbing. I know biblically, as I read the Bible, I can tell what's coming in the last days. Anti-Semitism is only going to increase. I know that because the Bible warns about that. There's always been anti-Semitism here, but this trend, you would think back from a logical standpoint, after World War II, you would think that there would be a lot more people. I realize that was a long time ago now, but still there'd be people that would push back against anything that's anti-Semitic. But that is not what has happened. In fact, right after World War II, anti-Semitism was exposed. It was still everywhere in the world, and it never went away.
It never really stopped. In my book, and I have both my books on the topic, I speak of it being swept under the carpet of society. Like we're not going to talk about anti-Semitism for a while. It's taboo. It was swept under the carpet, but it was never really destroyed, never completely pushed away. It came back in, within 20 years after, 20 to 30 years after the end of the war, it came back, but it was morphed into this new anti-Semitism, which continues morphing. There's one more number I want to give you, Tom.
Okay.
You're not going to believe this. Up to 19% of millennials believe that Jews caused the Holocaust.
That's just so, it's just so bizarre when you hear these things, and yet we live in an environment where all kinds of lies are being told and people are believing the lies or taking them as truth. I remember several years ago when Ahmadinejad was the president of Iran, and he was really pushing the Holocaust denial. And trying to get that driven into as many parts of the world as he could, that the Holocaust didn't really happen. I mean, when you look at it, it's just absurd. But here's the way I see things going also with this, Olivier. Auschwitz is still there. I know there's people that are brought over from Israel. They're going into the IDF. Some of the young people from the schools are brought over, the Jewish kids, and brought over to see Auschwitz. Look, this is real. This is part of your history. And the Jews have kept up these memorials or use these things as memorials to teach the younger generation so they never forget. Hence, you have Yad Vashem, you have Holocaust museums here in the United States. But as we watch, history in America is being rewritten. Statues are being removed. And as all of these things are changing, it's also going to bring up the opportunity to deny the Holocaust and say, no, this isn't really what happened to the Jews. The Jews caused the Holocaust. And then, of course, the history from coming from Nazi Germany and from Joseph Goebbels and Hitler was, listen, the Jews are the problem. The Jews need to be exterminated. They're the ones, they've got all the money. They're manipulating everything. But isn't that similar to the conversation we're starting to hear now?
Well, yeah. Well, this is what's happening right now. And the danger when you look at this generation that we're talking about right now, the younger generation, is you get, for instance, 20% of them believe the Jews are responsible for the Holocaust. You put these kids on college campuses, and now they got the pro-Palestinian factions like Student for Justice in Palestine, or the Muslim the Muslim Brotherhood, the Muslim Student Union, who push exactly that agenda of anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian, and those kids don't know what they're talking about. The Jewish kids, or the millennials, sorry, I should say, they don't have a clue about the real history. Now you put them in the context of a group of people telling them the Jews are bad, Israel needs to be destroyed, and you go like, well, I guess so. I mean, because the numbers are here. So on one hand, they don't study real history, and on the other hand, they're being fed revisionism on how Israel, the Holocaust never happened, or the Jews, really inflated the whole thing so they could have a case for moving back to Israel and taking the land away from the Palestinians. That's another version, and they can't fight because they don't know. They don't know anything, so they go like, yeah, that sounds good. So you have a lot of the young generation right now is being prepared. I mean, they're going to replace us, and it's very scary for the future.
Yeah, it's very frightening when you look at this. Here's this also, this article. It just confirms everything you're saying. 2%, only 2% of American millennials adhere to a biblical worldview. This is a study from just a couple of weeks ago. The article goes into some details that are very alarming. So when you take the things that you just quoted, you look at an article like this, 2% of millennials having a biblical worldview, well, that means 98% of their worldview is entirely it's anti-biblical. So everything that they do everything everybody does is based on whatever their worldview is, the decisions you make. So when you look at these things, the stats that you're bringing out with the millennials, and then you bring up going into college campuses, I've been watching the Palestinian movements within the college campuses for several years now, and you see this is really easy. This is going to be really easy to shape the mind of people to blame everything on the Jews. And it's very disturbing to see the direction it's going to come, especially again, as in America, we are rewriting history. There's the new textbooks that are coming. Our own foundations are being destroyed. And the mass media in America is facilitating so much of this just by what they are producing with their propaganda and the narrative. So history is being rewritten, and it's not going to be favorable, I'm afraid, for the Jewish people. And that's one of the reasons why we do this program.
Right. No, absolutely. It's there's new textbooks coming up. I mean, I think you've got some of them in California. You're fighting for some of those against textbooks.
Yeah. Very disturbing things.
Historical revisionism. I really want to encourage people to look at that latest article that I put, because not only do I give some of the numbers, but I listed, and I'll just give you, without giving you the details, I listed ways to really help people. And I said, how can you change things? Well, when it comes to education, it's never too late. And some ways it can be accomplished. Visit a Holocaust memorial or museum. They're all over the U.S. They're in Israel, in the world, but they're also all over the U.S. And I put links. Visit a camp if you can. Go to a camp in Europe, in Eastern Europe. If you have the opportunity to do that, I think it will change your life. It changed mine, even though as a Jew, I knew all about it because some of my family died in there. But when I went in 2010, it really gave me a new perspective. Watch a movie or a program, read a book. I mean, and I list a lot of good books. And so all those things you can do, you can travel to a camp, you can go to a museum, you can watch movies, you can read, but do something. None of us can do it all, but all of us can do something.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's not the time to sit back and say, well, only 2% of millennials or 1 to 3% of millennials are thinking like, or 20% are blaming the Jews for what they've done. Instead, we do something. We can educate. Olivier, my children are even younger than your children. They will fall into the Gen Z category. I'm very thankful that both of my kids have been to Israel. My daughter's been twice with us. My son's been 3 times with us. But there is a need. I want to exhort everybody out there that's watching this, whether you're a parent or a grandparent, the young people that you have contact with in your life, whether kids or grandkids, or maybe neighbors come over to your house, educate them. Start giving them something that is worthwhile, because there's so much garbage out there and so much time is wasted, but we can educate and we can do. The universities are doing exactly the opposite. They're feeding the lies. And in the Bible, Romans chapter 1, the Bible talks about the generation when the truth will be suppressed with lies. That is what we are witnessing. So I'm watching this. What can we do? Olivier, you have tools. We'll put them up on the video also so people can see them and access them. But what's the news article, and where can people access the news article? NewAntisemitism.com?
NewAntisemitism.com. This is where they can find all of my weekly articles. The podcast are there, also my books, my DVDs, videos. Everything is on that website, NewAntisemitism.com. And but you're right, Tom. It starts in the family. And then you and I were talking the other day about the fact that there is a broken family unit. We know this. We live at a time where there's a lot of single parents, and we have to deal with that. Well, it doesn't matter if you're a single dad or a single mom. You still have a responsibility to bring up your kids and educate them. And something can be done even with single parents. It starts in the family. We cannot rely on the school system at any level, especially university level, to educate our kids. Otherwise, they're going to completely brainwash them with the wrong information.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. It's been happening for a while now.
It has been happening. It's only getting worse. And hopefully right now we're in this COVID-19 generation that people will wake up and realize that we're being lied to about all sorts of things. I'm not here to talk about the coronavirus, but just the reality of the subject is that you and I are talking about today. Let's step up to the plate and do everything that we can.
One more thought, if I may. When people listen to you and I on this topic, or read my articles and say like, well, you know what, I don't deny the Holocaust, but I'm not Jewish, and how is that going to change anything in my life? Well, here's one thought that I put in my article that I think was important, is that if this new generation is completely unaware of such an important event like the Holocaust, with 12 million people died, 6 million Jews, but 12 million people died. from the Nazi war machine, if they're unaware of the reality of that tragic event, how much less unaware are going to be of other events that are not as important. Mm-hmm. So if the Holocaust is where the bar is, and they don't have a clue about what went on, other things they're going to be completely ignorant, and we're raising a generation of kids who are going to have no idea of what history is all about, and it's going to be very easy to cancel culture with a generation who has no foundation, no roots anywhere.
Oh yeah, there's no roots, and it's disturbing. But we do have opportunity. We need to be involved in this fight, because there really is a fight that's taking place right now in America and the whole culture. So we can do. Olivier, again, your books are.
Books are End Times Anti-Semitism, the new chapter in the Logos Hatred. I know my book so well I don't even remember the title. And the time is now. 7 steps Christians should take to help their Jewish friends. They really go hand in hand. This is a history of what has happened over 2,000 years and what's happening today. And this is a little guide on what Christians can do, or I would say even people of goodwill can do to make a difference. And if we don't start making a difference now, I tell you, Tom, you know my heart, and I know it's part of your heart too. They're coming for the Jews again.
Oh yeah,
we're seeing the same momentum that we saw in the 30s and 40s happening. Yeah. So we need to be involved. We need to make a difference.
Yeah, I want to be on the right side of this. I want to be on God's side in this, and I'm hoping all of our viewers will please hear me. We can do something. We're in a fight, and now's not the time to just sit back. Certainly you've observed that over the last several months. We are in a spiritual battle, and let's stand strong and do what is right, be on God's side in all of this. Olivier, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to these monthly updates on everything Jewish with you. And by the way, next time we're supposed to be having an update like the day after the election. We might wait for a week to see how things go because it'd be interesting. But I'm looking forward to having you back on here. Thank you very much.
Next time we could do a topic like, why do Jews vote Democrat?
You know what? Let's do it. You good for that?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good for that.
We'll do that. That sounds great. And we'll talk about a few things regarding the Shabbat too that I always find fascinating. Thank you very much. Shalom.
God bless and shalom, my brother.